What is going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to teach you how to make multiplayer online games in GameMaker Studio 2. So this is a networking tutorial, and hopefully I can teach you and put you on the right track to be making some awesome multiplayer online games, or maybe even take some games you've already made, convert those to where they work online so that you can play them with your friends. This is one of my favorite things to do in GameMaker, and I'm so excited for this video. It's been a long time coming. So just a disclaimer, this is more intermediate to advanced stuff. It would be helpful if you did already understand data structures, especially DS maps, DS lists, as well as have a little bit of knowledge about buffers, because you're going to be working a lot with buffers. So it would be useful to understand those. And other than that, I'll do my best to explain things as I go. I can't explain everything. There's a lot of resources on the net. However, I think this is a very good tutorial for people who have never done this, but you don't know where to start. And I think that would be good, a good mindset to have in approaching these tutorials. So, and also just realize there's more than one way to skin a cat, so I'm not going to necessarily be showing you the best way, the standard way of doing certain things. I'm just giving you ideas and principles, and you can figure out what works best for your game and the programming situations that you'll encounter. So you can take what I teach you, tweak it to make it work for you. So let's go ahead and get into it. Basically, we're going to start with two project files. We're going to start with a project called our client, where this is where our game world's going to be, our graphics, our sprites, everything the player is going to see is going to be in our client. We're also going to have another project file called our server. So this is what we see. This is the server that we're going to be running somewhere that the clients connect to. You can make the client and server in one project. It depends on what kind of game you want to make. If you want the players to have access to the server, you're probably going to want to build it all in one package. For me, most of my games, I don't want the players to have access to the server or know what's going on there. So I normally do two different project files. So you could just do it all in one. It's up to you. As you're following the tutorial, just stick with me and do two. And the next project, you can do what you want. Okay, so this is basically what we're going to make. I made this beautiful paint graphic here, this box. I did that myself, by the way. This is basically what we're going to make. We're going to make a server, as represented in the red box, and we're going to make clients, which I can paste one right there. Basically, this is how networking works. So we have a client, and the player opens the game, and then that client connects to the server. So basically, we can have, let's just add in 4 clients here. So this is basically what's going on. So let's say that these clients have established a connection with this server, and they do that by connecting to an IP address and a port. More on that later. So basically, this is how it works. Let's say client number 1 moves their character to the left. So this guy just moved to the left. Basically, what happens in networking is the client will send information to the server to say, hey, I just moved left. That server will then send information to all the clients to say, client number 1 moved left. So basically, on all of these clients' screens, they'll see that the guy moved left. And that's basically how it works. Let's say client number 2 jumped. Well, he just jumped. He's going to tell the server, hey, I just clicked the jump key. The server's going to tell all the clients, hey, client number 2 clicked the jump key, so make him jump on everybody's screen. That's about all there is to it. That's how chat works. Someone types a chat message. They tell the server what they said. The server then sends what they said to all the clients, and the clients display that information. That's all there is really to it. Okay, well, I should save this and sell it on eBay in a frame, but I'm actually going to close it. Okay, so sorry about that. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a little bit of work. First, we're going to work on our server. So I have an object called con_server. I'm going to open this room, and I'm going to go ahead and throw the object into this room just so it's there. Gonna close. I might as well rename the room while I'm at it. to room server. Very cool. Let me close that, get it out of the way. So the first thing we're going to do is write some code to make it to where this server will be online. So we're going to make a create event and delete that. And this is basically all that we are going to do. We're going to say, let's see. I have some notes over here because I really don't want to make any mistakes and have to fix it later in a video. So here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to set a port. So we're going to say port equals, and then you can write in a port. So if you don't know about port forwarding, you're going to want to go research that after this video, because if you're using an internet router and a lot of internet routers block all ports and you have to go into your router settings and unblock that port to be able to host a server. Otherwise, the server will be online. They just can't connect to that port. So you can put in a port. We can just throw in a number there. 64,198 sounds like a good port number. Next, we can make a variable called max clients. So this is how many clients are allowed to connect to the server. So we can put 12, or you can stress test later and see how many work on your server before it explodes. Next, we are going to just write a function called network create Netflix. That's great. I just wrote Netflix. Network create server. And then we're going to write the server type. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and put in network socket TCP. Next, we're going to put in our port, which is our port variable, and then max clients, or max client. Actually, yeah, let's make that plural. What's with this variable? Name it max clients. Okay, so basically that's it to make this server go live and be online. One thing I'm going to point out is in this network server create, this guy right here, network socket type. You're going to want to know what's going on here. So basically, there are three types of servers, or servers. There's three types of servers you can make in GameMaker Studio 2. There is a TCP server. There is a, what is it called? Brain fart. UDP server. And then recently added, there is WebSockets, WS server. So there are these three types. And it would do you good for the game that you're making to research the difference, especially between TCP and UDP, because each one has a pro and a con. I'll just save you a lot of work and just say go with TCP probably for most of your projects. And basically this has to do with some servers are faster, but some packets can get lost in translation, while other servers are slower, but it's more reliable in getting data. So I believe TCP is the one that's more reliable, while UDP is the one that's a little more faster, but a little less reliable, I think. But you can research that, and really you need to for the type of game that you're making. You need to research and figure out which one's best for you. I can't tell you that. It depends on how you make your game. We're going to go with TCP, and then my favorite, just released, WebSockets. Now, if this game is going to be HTML5 and it's going to be a browser-based game, you need to use this on the client and the server. You need to change this guy to this, okay? And that'll make it a web server, and use WebSockets. So for this tutorial, we're going with TCP. Next, we're going to make a buffer, which I'll just name it server buffer, equals buffer create. You're going to want a size of your buffer, which we're going to make it about 1 megabyte. Buffer type is going to be buffer fixed, and then alignment, you can just put the number 1. So basically, oh, I closed that. I shouldn't have closed that, the paint thing. But basically, the data that the server and the clients are sending back and forth are called packets. And basically, we create something called a buffer, which basically takes a bunch of data, puts it in this thing called a buffer. It could be like called the car. You know, it's like a little, I don't know. I guess you can call it the passenger of a car. And then it takes that buffer, it goes into a packet, which that's the car, that's the vehicle, and sends that packet somewhere. So a buffer is going to contain a lot of things, and we'll get more into that as we go. That's it. That's literally it. Once you have this, once we run this, we have a freaking server going. And that's it. Now, the first time you run this, you might have a pop-up with Windows saying, should we allow this network to happen? And you just click yes. So that's going on. Next, we're going to go to our, I guess we can add an event. We're going to add an async event. So async, and we will go to networking, and we're going to write a little bit of code. Type /event equals ds map find value. And so basically, async, if you've never used it, it's going to create a DS map where you're going to get data from, and the DS map is going to be called async load. That's what it's going to be called. And there's a whole bunch of keys and stuff. I can't get into explaining all this. We'll be here 20 minutes. If you'd like me to make another video explaining it, I can. But basically, you just need to know it creates a DS map, and you can get data from that. And the key is called type. And then we're going to do a switch, and we're going to say type event. And then we're going to, now, basic switch event, you know, pretty easy. Then we're going to say case network type connect. So, yeah, break. Yeah, okay. So basically, when a client connects, you know, so in our networking event, so a networking event happened, a client just sent information to the server. So when that happens, when the client sends info to the server, this networking thing is going to go off, and this DS map is going to have some data in it, and then it's this switch right here that takes that data and sees what exactly is going on. So when we connect, we can do some stuff. So I think I'm going to go back to our create event. We're going to add a DS list called, what do I have it called there? Yeah, that's a good name for it. Socket list. And basically, a socket is the unique ID of a client that has connected. So that way, you can send data to that unique ID of the client. So we're going to store all of that in a list called socket list. So when a client connects, we're basically going to say ds list add, and then we're going to say socket list, and then the value of that is actually, let's do this, socket equals ds map find value async load socket. So we're pulling from that DS map again. We're getting the socket of the client that just connected, then DS list add, socket list, socket, boom. So now the server has a record of, hey, we have a client and we've added it to the list, so now we can send data to it, okay? And then, of course, we want to add case network type disconnect, that whenever this client disconnects, we want to remove that socket from the list. So let's go ahead and do that. Socket equals ds map find value async load, get the socket again, and then ds list delete socket list ds map, ds list find index socket list socket. So it finds this socket position using ds list find index, and that deletes it from the socket list. That way, when client number 1 moves left, it's not sending information to a client that doesn't exist anymore. So pretty easy. And then we want to add one more friendly little thing here. And these are going to be even more useful later, because when a client connects, maybe you want to say, okay, go into the game world. And so you'll send data out of this switch. Maybe a client disconnects. Well, maybe you want to send information to all the other clients that client disconnected, delete his character, like destroy him, okay? Then we'll say case network type data. And we will say received packet. So we're going to make a script called receive packet. So this is anytime we receive a packet, or in other words, data from the clients, it's going to run the script, which is basically going to be a huge switch that's like has a bunch of stuff like, did they walk? Did they jump? Did they pick up an item? Did they whatever? Did they kill an enemy? And it's going to go through this massive list of every possibility, find what the player did, and then send that information off to everybody else. So we're going to need two pieces of information here. We're going to need buffer equals ds map find value. Go back to that async load. Very useful stuff. Grab the buffer. And then we're going to do that one more time, but we're going to say socket equals ID. So for this one, you use ID instead of socket like we did there. So this is some buffer information, and this is the socket of the client, that unique ID of the client that just sent information. So while we're at it, let's go ahead and create a script called received packets, or is it packet? Received packet, right? One more thing we want to do is before this receive packet, we want to go to the very start of our buffer. So buffer seek, and yeah. Cool. So that's what you're going to have to do. And basically what this does, what this guy does right here, what are you giving me an error for? Is going to the very start of your buffer. So there's a lot of information in the buffer, and you want to always go back on top of that buffer to get the very first piece of information that's in that buffer. So just so you know. Again, it'd be really helpful if you don't know about buffers to go ahead and start looking into those and learn a little bit about it. So let's open up our receive packet script, and which is right here. Oh gosh, I have two of them open. Okay, so receive packet. Let's grab our two arguments, which is buffer and our socket. And then we want to say message ID equals buffer read buffer u8, and then the type, what am I doing? Buffer and then buffer u8. Okay, so, and then we can do a switch message ID, and all of our possible things that the server and the client can be doing going to be right there in this big ol' switch event. Okay, so that about does it for the server for now. Make sure again you have this message ID. This is basically, should always be the first thing that the buffer sends is what you want the client to say to the server. So like, oh, the first thing is I moved left or moved right. So hopefully this will make sense sometime in the future. Okay, let's go over to our client, and let's go ahead and go to our room. This is easy. We can do this part. Throw the client into the room and rename the room client. Let's open up client, con_client, and let's add an event, a create event. And basically now we're going to connect to the server. We're going to have this client connect to the server. And to do that, we're going to say client equals, because it's going to give us a little piece of data in our client. So we can go ahead and make this into a variable. Client equals network create socket, and then network socket TCP. Remember we talked about that? So if you did UDP, both client and server need to be saying UDP, just so you know. Next, we want to say network connect client, and then our URL, which is actually an IP address. So put in 127.0.0.1. And then we want to put in the port. So, and make sure these are in parentheses. So this is your IP address. You're going to probably want to test on a local IP address. And if you want to get your local IP address, open up your command prompt, Windows key, CMD, click enter. And type ipconfig. And like, I probably shouldn't show you this. My bad. Anyway, you didn't just see that. So anyway, well, I might as well show you because you saw it. So yeah, basically this guy right here, your default gateway, 192.168.0.1 would be my my local IP address. Your friends won't be able to connect to that. Only people on your network would be able to connect to that, just so you know. Okay, so 127.0.1 also normally works. It should work too. Okay, so for the port, we want the same port as our server. So remember, our server port was 64198. So 64198. Network connect. Yay. That's all you have to do. And if we ran the game, we would connect to the server. And it would be that easy. If the server was running and online. So next we want to create a buffer for the client. $10.24. So that's about a megabyte buffer. So we can send about a megabyte of data basically. Okay, created the buffer for the client. Next we want to add an async networking. Kind of the same we did in the other thing. Type event equals dsmap find value async load type switch type event and then case network type data. You probably don't need to connect or disconnect for this for the clients. This is, again, we did this in the server, remember? The network type data. Network type data. So this is data like you jumped, you picked up an item, you were running around, you're doing whatever. That's what that is. So it's basically the same stuff. So buffer equals dsmap find value async load buffer. And then we want to go to the start of that buffer by going buffer seek start 0. Again, I don't have it in me to explain every detail like I normally do in my tutorials. So like I said, it would just really benefit you to take time to study buffers and how they work so that you can just kind of know what's going on here. If you have questions, you can definitely leave a comment. So we have our buffer that... Okay, so this is data the server is going to be sending. The server is going to send a buffer. Remember, the buffer is the passenger of the car, and the car is the packet. So a packet's coming with a passenger, and that passenger's name is buffer, and it's coming to the client like a speeding bullet and like a Tesla car. And then the client's going to grab that buffer, go to the very start of the buffer, and then we're going to run received packet. Buffer. So just like in our server, we created receive packet, we're going to receive a packet in our client. So we're going to make a script called received packet. And it's going to be, we're going to, buffer equals argument 0. That's the piece of data that we're sending is the buffer information. And then message ID equals buffer read, buffer, the type is a buffer U8. So again, whenever we're sending information, the first thing we're sending, this buffer read is a little piece of data, it's a number, but it's going to be a number that we're going to assign. And it could be 1, it could be 10. 10 could be equal to jump. 5 could be equal to, walk left or whatever. So you'll see. And then we're going to do a switch message ID. Look at this. Okay, now we can do something freaking fun, okay? Everything we just did is the hardest part of networking. Everything after this gets fun and gets easy. So we've set it up. We've set up a framework for our server and our client to start communicating. So let's run it just to see if we're going to get any errors. So I'm running my server and I'm running my client. So, malform switch statement. This guy right here, what? Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and comment out the switch statement then. Apparently you have to have data in it. So let's try that again. Let's run the server. Let's run the client. You can click F5 to run your projects, by the way. Okay, no errors. We should be good. So you can't see it. It's just black screens. But basically, this server is online and this client totally connected to the server. You know how we can find out that that's true? By in our, let's go to our, what are we in our client? We can say this. Connected equals network connect. Now this function will return if we've connected or not. So then we can say show message connected. So if we get a number greater than 0, I believe, or 0 or greater, then that means we're connected. 0, we're connected. It works. Oh, that makes me so happy. So now see, if we close the server and run the client, we should get a negative number. Hopefully. Maybe. Run! Why aren't you running? Like, froze. Okay, run. Why isn't it running? Okay, so I stopped the video for a second because I didn't know what was going on, but basically when we run the client without the server running, we will eventually get a negative number, but it literally takes like 5 minutes because it's trying to connect to a server that's not running. And then we get a pop-up, but it takes forever, and I'm not going to put you through that torture. Just trust me, when a server's not running, you get a negative number. When it is running, you get a number of 0 or higher, okay? So, we have established a server and a connection. Like I said, that was the hardest part. Once you've got this down, you don't have to mess with a lot of this code again, okay? Really, where you're going to be working out of at this point is out of this script file right here called receive packet. I had to comment that out because we couldn't run the stuff. So let me uncomment this one over here in the server. So yeah, everything from here on out, mainly you're going to be working out of receive packet, a little other side things, but this is it for the most part. So let's go ahead and set up our first thing. So we're going to create not a room, delete that. We're going to create an object called object player in our client. And I guess we can give them a little sprite, I guess. I'm just going to give them a green square sprite player. And yeah, I called them object client. We're going to name them object player. So we have our object player, and let's go ahead and let's throw him in the client for now. Later, we'll make it to where he won't be in the client until the client connects, and then the server will tell the client to create the player. But for now, go ahead and put him in the room. He's not going to hurt anything. And let's go ahead and make a hello world thing. We'll go ahead and say key pressed space. And now let's do something really fun. Okay. So whenever we click space, we're basically going to send data to the server, and we're going to send data from the server back to the client. So this is just, and then we'll end the video and I'll do a part 2 later and we'll expound on all of this. But what I'm going to show you is the very basic of everything you're going to be doing. So when we click space, we're going to say buffer seek, remember this, but we're going to say client dot client buffer. So we're just referring to that buffer that we created in the client. We're going to say buffer seek start 0. Again, go into the very start of the buffer like we always want to do. Then we're going to say buffer write. Kind of like INI files. You write and you read. Write, again, con client.client buffer. So our buffer from the client. And then we're going to say buffer / string. And we're going to give it the value of hello world. And then we're going to say network send packet. And we're going to say, what we name our packet? Client. Okay. We're going to say, yeah. We're going to say con client.client. Okay. And then our buffer ID is client buffer. And then our size is, yeah, buffer / tell con client.client buffer. Okay, that's it. That's how you send information to the server with a code kind of like this. And you can write as much as you want before you send the packet. So we could say, we could have 3 of these or 4 of these, and it says hello world, it says wizardy, it says, and we can put as much data as we want, up to about a megabyte, before, and then send all of that into a packet, and then the server grabs this. Okay, we're just going to do one for now. And so when we click space, it's sending data to the server. So that data is going to go to the server, and it's going to go right into this script. And I'm sorry, one thing we want to add before hello world is our handy dandy message ID. Okay, so what we're going to do is, let's go ahead and do this again. Buffer write con client.client buffer. And then buffer U8, and then the value, let's give it the value of number 1. So we're sending 2 little pieces of data. That first piece of data is the number 1, which is going to be in a message ID in the switch statement. So switch, when there's number 1, it's going to read this data right here. Okay, so it's sending this, it's taking this buffer, putting it all in a buffer, and sending that buffer through a packet into the server, and this is where we're going to land. So we sent 2 pieces of data. That first piece of data is being read right there. That message ID is that first piece of data that's being read, which is the number 1. Okay? The second piece of data from number 2 and all the other additional pieces of data will be read in our switch statement. So case 1, which is our hello world. We can say var message equals buffer read buffer string. So make sure that these things always sync up. Your type of buffer. So we sent a string, buffer string. So we're going to read a buffer string. We sent a buffer U8, which is basically a number, 0 to 200 and something. So we send a U8, and the first thing we read is a U8. Now you can look at the different types of buffers that you can send. If we open it up in the help file, there's all these different types of bubbles, buffers. A Boolean, true or false, a string. So familiarize yourself with these, because basically they're all different sizes. So when you're sending packets, you want everything as small as possible. So a buffer U8 is a number 0 to 255. A buffer U16 is 0 to 65,000. So you might want to use your X and Y positions for your players using a buffer U16. 32 is all the way up to 4 million. Okay, so good to know. But they have to sync. If they don't sync, it's not going to work. Okay, so the server has got this information. So if we say show message after this, the server will display a pop-up that says hello world. So let's go ahead and run the server. Let's run the client. Malformed, yeah, okay, I gotta comment this out in the client. Okay, F5. Run in the client. Okay, so here's our player, here's our server, here's our client. So when we click space, this guy's gonna show a pop-up. Oops, I didn't want to do that. I did not want to do that. Okay. Let's click space. Hello world. Woo! We did it. We sent data from the client to the server and we showed a pop-up. Aren't you so happy? That's it. We just sent data. Now, like, these could be on different computers. They could be in a different country, right? Okay, so we've sent data from the client to the server. The next thing we want to do is send it from the server to the client. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Like, yeah, let me just, yep. Okay. So this is our server, receive packet. And basically we can delete this message. Let's make the client receive the message. Okay. So we can just say again, buffer seek, this time we're going to want to say server buffer. And then we're going to say buffer seek start. And then we're going to do 0. And then, yeah, we're going to just say, again, buffer write. So it's the same, but it's in reverse. Instead of sending it to the server, we're sending it to the client. So server buffer, the type is a buffer string. And the value is what we receive from the client, which is message. And then we just want to say network. Actually, what do we want to do? We want to make sure that that's right. But we also want to send the message ID. Always forget to do that. Buffer write, server buffer U8, and then the number 1, which is our case. So the client will read that. Okay, so we have our 2 pieces of data, and then network send packet. We want to send it to the socket, which is the client that sent it to us, is right there, the socket. And then we want to say the, yeah, server buffer, and then buffer, the size is buffer tell server buffer. Bam. So now basically what's happening now, the client is sending this message, and then the server is just sending that message right back to the client who sent it. So in our client, in our receive packet, we're just going to say case 1, which remember that's the first piece of data we send is the number 1, and it's grabbing it right there in buffer read U8. So hello world, it's basically going to say var message equals buffer read, yeah, buffer, and then buffer string, and then show message, the message. And now it will, let's indent this properly. And now it will show the message on the client instead of the server. So we can go ahead and run these now. So here's our server, here's our client when we click space. So now this pop-up is from the client. It's not from the server, okay? So you can play around with that. I'm going to leave you there. The next video, I'll show you how to send from the server to all the clients. So maybe Hello World will go onto all the clients. Right now, it just goes to back to the client it sent it. But I'll leave you with that. One thing I'll do, let's do this. I'll just show you the potential here. Let's add another frame into our sprite player. Let's give him an orange frame. Let's go to our object player and let's create him, put a create event, image speed equals 0. We're going to change the image index of our player, okay? So now when we click space, instead of sending hello world, we're gonna delete this next piece of data. All we're gonna send is the message ID, okay? That's it. We're sending the message ID 1 to the server. That's all we're gonna do. So we remove the hello world message, the string. We're going to go to the server. We're going to delete this buffer read because we don't need it because we're not getting any data other than this piece of data right here. Let's delete this buffer string that we were sending because we don't need that because there's no message to send. Delete this comment. Then let's go back to client. Let's go to receive packet. Let's delete this because we're not receiving any data other than this message ID. But what we're going to do is say object player dot image index equals 1. That's it. It's just going to make us orange. Isn't that great? So now when we play the game and we click space, okay, so here's the server, here's the client. When we click space, boom, it changes us to orange. That's the potential. That's the kind of stuff that you can do. And again, if this server wasn't running, you wouldn't be able to do that. It's all just sending data back and forth. So I hope you liked this video. It's the longest video I've ever made. I'm going to make part 2 where we'll get into movement and other types of things. And of course, sending data to all the clients. Please leave a like if you watched this video and found it helpful. I really want to keep making these. I want to know you guys are watching and that it's being helpful to you. Please leave a comment if you like this. But that is it for this video. Like I said, it gets pretty easy from here on out. Challenging, easy, but it's a lot easier than everything else we just did. This was the hard part. It gets very easy from here on out. So follow me on Twitter if you're not already. You can support me on Patreon. That's a big help as well for my projects, and I'd like to do this more. So I guess I'll see you guys next video. Thank you so much for watching.